Hurry up, 5 minutes. 5 minutos. Esta noche es muy caliente.
Hey, download your TikTok app today so you can have Chinese spyware in your house for free. You go down! Give me money!
Fucking future!
We're talking about a fat ass and everything, yeah.
I said loud ass. It's like I took a poop and it was one of those painful ones that brings a tear to your eye. Well. Oh, I've made myself a precarious little nest. Oh, Jesus! And then? Working on it. Ah, that delay's pretty nice. Oh. What? Working on the thing. I gotta get stuff together. Because, you know, I couldn't possibly do the prep work before that.
Hello, motherfucker.
Hello to you, too. Ugh. I was gonna clean this hat, but I decided I was just like, well, it does say Dirty Hooker, to be fair. Why would I clean a hat that says Dirty Hooker? And I was looking around and I realized I finished my chicken cock and I killed the dead guy whiskey. Wait, I might still have the 111. Want tin cup? Oh no, I don't have any 111. Okay. Fuck. I know, Cheetah, you're not donating. Streams like this are only possible because of viewers like you. Oh! Tonight I will be drinking some Tin Cup. Oh. Jess Graber? I don't know. Founder? Ugh. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a thing. I could probably pour a little bit more. Okay. That puts you right here. Camera 1, camera 2, camera 1, camera 2. Yeah. Juggling plates, I'm telling you. How's work going right now, Cheetah? I didn't do it. I see you there. So left, right, left, right. Ugh. What do you say? Give it another 2-3 minutes before we kick in? Ugh. There we go. That's better. Am I pretty? I'm ready for a haircut for sure. And I definitely need to do something about all this nonsense. But you know, one day at a time. Oh my goodness, where did I leave off? Oh, my steel balls. They look pretty. If I had shiny chrome steel balls, I'd walk around without pants. Like, look at my chrome shiny steel balls. But alas, I don't. And it's probably for good reason. The amount of time I put into work and the amount of time I put into learning the guitar were simultaneous revelations to me. I finally knew why I was putting my nose into the grindstone. I guess it was a reunion of my parents' influence, my dad's creativity, and my mom's instinct to succeed. I might choose the hardest way to get wherever I want to go, but I'm always determined enough to get there. That inner drive has helped me survive those moments when everything was against me, and I found myself on my own with nothing else to see me through. You know, it's funny. I'll remember for later. I'll put a asterisk on that thought. It's funny. It's all funny. Whiskey from diabetic piss. Well, no. Just filter mine once or twice for... Anyways. Work was something that I focused on and did well whether I liked my job or not. Because I was willing to work my ass off all night and day for the cash to support my passion. I got a job at Business Card Clocks, a small mail-order clock factory. From September through December each year, I would assemble clocks for a bunch of companies, holiday gift baskets. I'd put an enlarged reproduction of their business card on a piece of masonite, insert a clock movement in the center, put a wooden frame around it, box it up, and that was that. I made thousands and thousands of these things. We were paid by the hour, and I was the only person there who got crazy. I'd be there at 6 a.m., work all day through the night, then I'd sleep there. I don't think it was legal, but I didn't care. I wanted to make as much money as I could during the season. It was a great job that I kept for quite a few years, though it did eventually bite me in the ass. My boss, Larry, paid me by personal checks, so I was never on the books at his company, and he never reported my salary to the IRS. Since I wasn't on the books, I saw no reason to pay taxes on my earnings. But the very moment that I made money with guns a few years later, the IRS came calling, demanding all those back taxes plus interest. I still can't believe that all of the things I've done, the government nailed me for my job at a clock factory. I found out later how it went down. The IRS audited Larry and grilled him about a certain amount of money that couldn't be accounted for over the course of a few years, so he was forced to confess that it had been paid out to his employee, me. The IRS tracked me down and put a lien on my earnings, accounts, and assets. Any money that I deposited in a bank would immediately be seized to cover my tax debt. At that point, I'd been broke for too long to give it up all at once. I'd finally gotten it. Rather than pay it off with my share of Guns N' Roses' first advance check, I had my cut consolidated into traveler's checks, which I kept on me at all times. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Man, he likes putting shit off, don't he? Slash, don't do that! Another job was at the Hollywood Music Store, an instrument and sheet music shop on Fairfax and Melrose. As much as I was trying to earn my keep while pursuing what I really wanted to be doing, there were so many what the fuck moments. Here's one of them. There was a guy who used to come in and shred every day in the guitar section. He'd pick a new guitar off the wall as if he'd never seen it before, and proceed to play it for hours. He'd tune it, shred on it, and just kind of hang out and play for what seemed like years. I'm sure there's one in every music store. Yeah, it's called the employees. When I started junior high, there were so many great hard rock records for me to listen to and learn from. Cheap Trick, Van Halen, Ted Nugent, AC/DC, Aerosmith, and Queen were all in their prime. Unlike a lot of my guitar playing peers, I never strove to imitate Eddie Van Halen. He was the marquee lead player around, so everyone tried to play like he did, but nobody had his feel. And they didn't seem to realize that. His sound was so personal, I couldn't imagine coming close or even wanting to. I picked up a few of Eddie's blues licks from listening to him, licks that no one registers as a signature style because I don't think he's ever properly appreciated for his great sense of rhythm and melody. So while everyone else practiced their hammer-ons and listened to Eruption, I just listened to Van Halen. I've always enjoyed individualistic guitar players from Stevie Ray Vaughan to Jeff Beck to Johnny Winter to Albert King, and while I've learned from observing their technique, absorbing the passion of their playing has taught me so much more. In any case, things had changed by the time I got to high school. By 1980, English punk had found its way to LA and had become something utterly ridiculous that had nothing to do with its roots. Ugh. It was a swift, impossible to ignore fashion statement. Suddenly, every older kid I knew was wearing torn-up t-shirts, creepers, and wallet chains made of paper clips or safety pins. I never understood what the big deal was. It was just another superficial installment in the West Hollywood scene that revolved around the Rainbow, the Whiskey, Club Lingerie, and the Starwood. I never considered LA punk worth listening to because I didn't consider it real. Around then, the Germs were the big band, and they had many imitators, all of whom I thought couldn't play and totally sucked. The only bands that I thought were worth anything were X and Fear, and that was it. I respected the fact that the core of punk from a musician's point of view was not about not being able to play very well and not giving a shit about it. But I had a problem with the fact that everyone in the scene exploited that aesthetic for all the wrong reasons. There's a difference between bad playing and deliberately playing badly for a reason. Coming out of London and New York, punk rock made an impression, and as much as it was misinterpreted in LA, it did give birth to a bunch of great clubs. The Café de Grand being the best of them. That was the greatest venue at which to see true hardcore punk shows, but it wasn't the only one. The Palladium put on great hardcore shows too. I saw the Ramones there, and I'll never forget it. It was intense as surfing big waves. Other than a few exceptions, LA punk was as pathetic as the miles of posers lined up outside of the Starwood every weekend. At that time, I'd finally gotten to an age where I was the older kid. I had spent my life running around, being the younger guy, hanging with the older kids, getting into what they were into, always being part of the cool stuff they were doing. Now I was that kid, and as far as I was concerned, the punk movement and this really horrible fashion thing that had followed it in the back door had ruined everything. I'd just gotten old enough to appreciate and enjoy all the stuff that had gone on before that. And just as I had everything started to fucking suck. From the time I was born up until 1980, everything was pretty stable. It was all sort of based on rock and roll, despite the pretty watered-down rock bands that came out. Foghat, Styx, Journey, REO Speedwagon, and many more. From 79 and 80 on, with the exception of Van Halen, everything went in a different direction, which instilled a whole different kind of rebellion. And what I was into more or less got phased out by trendiness. After I was expelled from Fairfax High School for that social studies incident, I found myself in high school limbo. Education has always been a priority for my mother. She let me live wherever I could, however I wanted all summer long as I agreed to move in with her wherever she might be come fall. She needed real assurance that I was going to school, so nothing but my living under her roof would do. The summer after my expulsion, I enrolled for summer school at Hollywood High to try to earn the credits I needed to join Beverly Hills Unified High School with the rest of the class at the beginning of my sophomore year. But I also tried to get out of high school altogether by studying for taking the proficiency exam. It didn't go so well. During the first half hour, I took a smoke break and never went back. It happens? During this period, my mom finally left her boyfriend, the photographer. Once boyfriend began to freebase away literally everything in the house, he eventually ended up bankrupt. My mom and my brother packed up and moved out suddenly. I wasn't spending much time at home at the time, so I didn't get to witness it all go down firsthand. But when I heard, I was relieved. My mom, brother, and grandmother moved into an apartment together on Wilshire and La Cienega, and, per Mom's rules, I joined them there in the fall. Mom wanted me to graduate high school before I set out on whatever path I chose to follow, but I hadn't left her much to work with. My grades, attendance, and behavior record were less than stellar, so she did her best. She got me enrolled at a continuation school at Beverly Hills High. Continuation is where they put kids with adjustment problems, learning disorders, behavior issues, and those who didn't otherwise sync with the standard curriculum. Whereas at Fairfax, I thought this was a situation to avoid. Here was perfect for me. I was allowed to work at my own pace, and I could set my hours to suit my new place in the workforce. I'd arrive at 8 and leave at noon because I had 2 jobs at the time. Aside from the Fairfax movie theater, the fall was high season at the Clock Factory. My classmates in continuation education at Beverly Hills High were a real cast of characters. There were a couple of full-on Harley-Davidson biker chicks. One that was a behemoth whose heavy-set 40-something Hell's Angel boyfriend picked her up every day. He'd arrive early and just sit there revving his engine. The other chick had her own Harley. There were also 3 Sunset Strip rocker chicks in class. Their Aquanet hair extended in every direction, and their ripped-up t-shirts and spiked stiletto heels spoke for themselves. All 3 were attractive in their own way. They knew how to use lipstick and put on and eyeshadow, put it that way. They knew this other girl in class. Her name was Desiree, the daughter of one of my dad's friends, Norman Seif, a well-known rock photographer. We were playmates when we were little, and we used to play naughty with each other back then. I had a crush on her all those years ago, and I had so many more reasons to have a crush on her when I saw her again. She sat a row in front of me and wore nothing but loose sleeveless shirts and no bra. She had grown into a hot, buxom punk rocker who was still as cute to me as she had been when we were 7. Okay, that's a hot 7-year-old. I understand what he's trying to say, but Slash, come on now. Well, I think I'm gonna need a little more whiskey for a night's end. Just sip it. Don't chug it. Shh. Don't tell me how to live my life. There was other riffraff in that class as well. We were a diverse and outlandish enough group that we could have been collectible figurines. There was a surfer stoner, Jeff Spicoli guy, the hot teenage mom slut, the plump brooding goth, and sad Indian kid who worked the night shift at his parents' 7-Eleven. All of us barely clinging to the fringe of high school society. Looking back, I'd like to know how every person in the classroom ended up there at the otherwise ritzy Beverly Hills High, no less. We were sequestered together for the benefit of our progressive education in one classroom with one co-ed bathroom that doubled as our community smoking lounge. That is where I discovered why those 3 Sunset Strip rocker chicks looked like they did. They were the unofficial presidents of the Motley Crue fan club. They did free PR as well. They turned me on Motley during the first smoke break I shared with them. I had known about Nicky Sixx, the bassist and creator of Motley Crue, since his first band, London, because Steven and I saw them play the Starwood one night when we managed to sneak in. London had true stage presence. Combined with their low-budget pyrotechnics and kiss-esque clothes, they were band enough to blow any teenage mind. I had no idea that Nicky had met Tommy, and they had found the guys and evolved into Motley Crue. Neither did I know that they were spearheading the movement that would displace LA punk overnight. Motley didn't look like Quiet Riot, Y&T, or any other Sunset Strip band of the day. They were as equally over the top, but they weren't quite like anyone else. They were so into their own thing that there was no way that anyone, aside from me, I suppose, could have mistaken 3 girls for anything other than Motley Crue fans. There are moments in life that only time can properly frame. At best, you know the snapshot is special when you take it, but most of the time only distance and perspective prove you right. I had one of those moments just before I ditched education altogether. It was the day Nicky Sixx and Tommy Lee showed up outside of my school. 6 years later, I'd be doing lines with them off the flip-down metal meal trays on their private jet, but seeing them loitering outside Beverly Hills is more memorable to me. They were wearing high-heeled boots, stretch pants, teased-out hair and makeup. They were smoking cigarettes, talking to girls in my high school parking lot. It was sort of surreal. I watched my newfound continuation friends, those 3 Motley look-alike chicks, stare at 2 of them with glazed donut eyes as Tommy and Nicky nonchalantly handed them posters to hang and flyers to hand out on the strip announcing Motley's next show. I was in awe. Not only did these chicks find this band so exciting that they chose to dress like them, they were also willing to be their volunteer street team. Nicky had given them copies of their new EP, Too Fast for Love, and their job was to convert all their friends into Motley Crue fans. It was like seeing Dracula set his disciples loose on Beverly Hills to suck the blood of virgins. That's one way to look at it. Come on, guys. If you like what I do here, tell friends. I could use the viewership. Come on. We need our little psycho bloodsuckers out there. I need the help. I really do. I'm sure you've bothered like 2 or 3 people, all of you, but I mean, hell, if each of you bother like 200 or 300 people and we get like 1% of that, boom, I make partner. Just saying. I only need to average 75 years to make partner. God, what a number. Anyways. I was impressed and objectively envious. I could never be in a band that looked or sounded like Motley Crue, but I wanted what they had. I wanted to play guitar in a band that inspired that degree of devotion and excitement. I went to see Motley that weekend at the Whiskey. Musically, it was just okay, but as a concert, it was effective. It was memorable because of the full-on production. Vince lit Nicky's thigh-high boots on fire, and they set off a ton of mini flashpots. Tommy pounded away like he wanted to split his drum set in two, while Mick Mars shuffled around his side of the stage, hunched over like the Walking Dead. What affected me the most, though, was the audience. They were so diehard, they sang every song and rocked out as if the band were headlining the LA Forum. It was obvious to me, at least, that soon, Motley would be doing just that. And in my mind, that meant only one thing. If they can do it on their own terms, why the fuck can't I? Least likely to succeed. Chapter 5. Once you've lived a little, you'll find that whatever you send out in the world comes back to you one way or another. It may be today, tomorrow, or years from now. But it happens. Usually when you least expect it. Usually in a form that's pretty different from the original. Those coincidental moments that change your life seem random at the time, but I don't think they are. At least that's how it worked out in my life. And I know I'm not the only one. Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't mean to make you leave. Sorry, don't tell your friends. Come back. No, I'm not going to sit here reading to myself. I know. I probably shouldn't be here doing this thing. Oh. I'll just sit here drinking whiskey, staring at you guys. Oh. Maybe I'll take a quick break, because, you know, reasons. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Can't tell me how to live my life. Oh. I mean, nobody's going to notice if I walk away because nobody's here. So on that note, maybe I'll disappear for about 5 minutes. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Try and talk me out of it. Go ahead. Go ahead. Talk me out of it. Oh. Scared everyone off with that piss dog cheetah.
Front door open.
I joined Uber One because I hate delivery fees and I need to save money for when I get canceled. And I don't want to go back to selling pictures of my feet. I mean, how would I even do that? Find out at bignaturaltoes.net. Join Uber One. Or don't, I don't care.
When Elvis opens his mouth and he sings, you know it.
It was so much fun to do and so liberating and exciting.
Sing the music that I want. Music that I love.
Just knows what it was.
Front door open.
I got plenty of whiskey for tonight.
Everyone could break my heart, but I try my best. And I find it hard to let go. The memories keep me together.
No, everybody done left. It's all good. I'll try to not let it bother me. Can't make any promises though. Well, cheers to that.
I got nothing to be scared of, 'cause where people live, there is always love. I know the answers in my heart, so I'll try my best to not fall apart. And I find it hard to let go. The memories keep me together. Gotta fight till the end, no pressure, no pressure. And I find it hard to say no to the ones who want something better, to the ones who's now saying never.
I hadn't seen Mark Cantor in about a year, for no other reason that we'd been busy doing other things. In the interim, he'd undergone a metamorphosis. When I'd last seen him, he was a music fan and was just beginning to take on a role in running the family business at Cantor's Deli. He was by no means a total rock guy, but that was more my angle. If broad strokes were drawn when we reconnected, Mark was someone else entirely. He was a sterling specimen of the obsessed die-hard rock devotee. I wouldn't have called it in a million years, but he dedicated his entire life to Aerosmith. He transformed his room into a wall-to-wall shrine. His Aerosmith posters were a continuous collage that looked like wallpaper. He had catalog copies of every magazine that they'd ever appeared in. He maintained an orderly gallery in plastic sleeves of signed photographs, and he had amassed enough rare foreign vinyl and bootleg concert cassettes to open a record store. No, that's fine. Penis. Mark definitely didn't dress the part. He looked like no more than a rock fan with a taste for Aerosmith t-shirts, but he never let his fandom go so far as to inspire sartorial homage to Stephen or Joe. It did, however, inspire stalking, stealing, trespassing, and a few other mildly illegal pursuits in the name of the cause. We've all been there, right? Yeah? Mark had also gotten himself in with the local ticket scalping community somehow. He'd buy a load of tickets for a show, then trade among the scalpers until he had bartered his way up to the perfect pair of floor seats. It was all a big game to him. He was like a kid trading baseball cards, but come showtime, he was a kid who walked away with the rarest cards up for grabs. Once Mark had a seat sorted out, his little operation was just getting going. He'd sneak in a very nice professional-grade camera and a collection of lenses by taking the whole apparatus apart, stashing the individual pieces in his pants, the arms of his jacket, and wherever else they fit. He never got caught, and he just caught amazing live shots of Aerosmith. The only problem was that he got into Aerosmith a little too late. When he started really digging them, they broke up. Ain't that the case? I mean, I've run into so many older bands where they've been defunct for decades. It's just like, well, that sucks. Anyways. I think the thing that makes most bands, like most great bands, great is the fact that they don't last forever. You know, so they only have a finite collection and a whole lot of what ifs. A cornerstone of Mark's collection of Aerosmith memorabilia was an empty bag of Doritos and a small Ziploc bag full of cigarette butts that he'd snatched up from Joe Perry's hotel room at the Sunset Marquis. Apparently, he'd staked the place out and managed to get in there after Joe checked out and before housekeeping showed up. Joe hadn't even played a show or anything the night before at that point. He had quit the band, actually. I thought it was a little weird. Aerosmith wasn't even together, but Mark was living for them 24/7. Mark had been one of my best friends in life since the day we met, so I had to support him by contributing to his collection. I did a freehand sketch of Aerosmith on stage for his birthday. I did it in pencil and then shadowed and highlighted it with colored pens. And it came out pretty good. That picture taught me a lesson that's been stated by the wise and otherwise throughout history. Whatever you put out into the world comes back to you in one way or another. In this instance, that picture came back to me literally and brought with it just what I'd been looking for. The next time I saw the drawing, it was at an impasse. I had been struggling unsuccessfully to get a band together amid a music scene that didn't speak to me at all. I wanted the spoils that I watched the lesser players enjoy. But if that meant changing as much as I'd have to, I wasn't having that. I tried, but I found that I was incapable of too much compromise. I won't lie now that retrospect is on my side and claim that deep down I knew it would all come together fine. It didn't look like it was going that way at all, but it didn't keep me from doing the only thing I could do. I did what felt right and somehow got lucky. I found 4 other dysfunctional, like-minded souls. I was working with Hollywood Music Store the day a slinky guy dressed like Johnny Thunders came up to me. He was wearing tight black jeans, creepers, dyed black hair, and pink socks. He had a copy of my Aerosmith drawing in his hand that a mutual friend had given him. Apparently prints of it had been made and circulated. This guy had been inspired enough to seek me out, especially when he heard that I was a lead guitar player. "Hey man, are you the guy who drew this?" he asked a bit impatiently. "I dig it. It's fucking cool." "Yeah, I did that," I said. "Thanks. What's your name?" "I'm Slash." "Hey, I'm Izzy Stradlin." We didn't talk for long. Izzy had always been the kind of guy with somewhere else that he needed to be. But we made a plan to hang out later on, and when he came by my house that night, he brought me a tape of his band. It couldn't have sounded worse. The tape was the cheapest type around, and their rehearsal had been recorded through built-in mic in a boombox that had been placed on the floor. It sounded like they were playing deep inside a jet engine. But through the static din, way in the background, I heard something intriguing that I believed to be their singer's voice. It was hard to make out, and his squeal was so high-pitched that I thought it might be a technical flaw in the tape. It sounded like the squeak that a cassette makes just before the tape snaps, except it was in key. After my incomplete stint at high school, I lived with my mother and grandmother in a house on Melrose and La Cienega in a small basement room off the garage. It was perfect for me. If need be, I could slip out the street level window undetected at any time, day or night. I had my snakes and my cats down there. I could also play guitar wherever I liked without bothering anyone. As soon as I dropped out of school, I agreed to pay my mother rent. Waffles indeed. As I mentioned, I held several day jobs while trying to put together or get a band that I believed in amid the quagmire of the LA metal scene. Around this time, I worked for a while at Cantor's Deli in a job that Mark basically invented for me. I worked alone upstairs in the banquet room, which wasn't suited for a banquet at all. It was more or less where they stored all kinds of shit they didn't necessarily need. I didn't realize the humor in that back then. Ha ha ha. They don't need you, Slash, but whatever. Not trying to judge, buddy. My job involved comparing the waitstaff's checks with the corresponding cashier's receipts so that Mark could quickly and easily figure out who was stealing. It was so easy, a job that the biggest idiot could do, and it came with perks. I'd eat pastrami sandwiches and drink Cokes the whole time, while putting those papers into piles, basically. My job did have its place. Through my sorting, Mark caught more than a few staffers who had been probably robbing his family for years. That's sad, though. It's your place of employment, and I understand you're not going to be able to... But thieves are probably one of the lowest level of criminals out there. Thieves and molesters, I think, are some of the worst. Anybody working in the illegal sex slave trade and thieves. In a way, they steal innocence, and I don't want to talk about it. Pinus. Waffles. After I left, Mark willed my job to Rob Schneider, my bass player, and Titus Sloan. Our band still played together sometimes, but we weren't taking things to the next level in any way. Without a singer, we weren't going to gig ever on the Strip. My job at the Hollywood Music Store was one of a few that I saw as stepping stones to playing guitar professionally full time. I wasn't in it for the fame and girls. I wanted it for a much simpler reason. There wasn't anything else in the world that I enjoyed more. At the music store, I was a sales clerk who sold and played every guitar on the floor, but that was by no means my only area of expertise. I also sold all kinds of shit that I knew absolutely nothing about. I could fake my way through explaining the ins and outs of bass amps, but where it came to drum sets, drum heads, drumsticks, and the wide array of percussion instruments I sold, I'm still impressed by my ability to put a shine on a pile of bullshit. No, I mean, drummers aren't really known for their massive intellects, but it's fine. I liked my job in the music store, but it was a voyeuristic purgatory. I spent every idle moment staring through the front windows at Cherokee Studios across the street. Cherokee was a bit of a recording destination in the early 80s. Not that I was a huge admirer, but every time I'd see the Doobie Brothers roll in there to cut a song, I can't say that I wasn't totally fucking envious. I was, however, totally fucking starstruck the day that I happened to gaze out the window to see Rico Kasich walking down the street heading to Cherokee. Around this time, Steven Adler returned from his exile in the valley, and we picked up precisely where we left off. Each of us had girls in our lives, and the four of us became an inseparable unit. My girlfriend Yvonne was a senior in high school when we met. She was a disciplined student by day and a rock chick by night. Let's not bring politics into this, Cheetah. Okay? And she managed those dual identities very well. Yvonne was an amazing girl. She was very smart, very sexy, very outspoken, and very ambitious. Today, she is a high-powered lawyer in LA. After she graduated, she enrolled in a psychology major at UCLA. And since by that point I had begun to more or less live with her on my days off, she'd somehow talk me into accompanying her to school at something like 8 a.m. Oh, the things we do for love, huh? I'd spend the morning at the UCLA campus, sitting outside smoking cigarettes and watching the uppies go by. Some days, whenever I found the course or professor interesting, I'd sit on her larger lecture classes. I'll be right here. I don't even remember her name anymore, but Steven's girl at the time and Yvonne became fast friends because the four of us went out every single night. I didn't even want to most of the time, but there we were, out there hitting the strip. I didn't even like the music of the day at all, though I tried to be positive. The coup de grace came when a very hyped, overrated innovation known as MTV first aired. I expected it to be like Don Kirshner's rock concert, the live, hour-long program that ran on Saturday nights from 73 to 81. That show spotlighted an artist a week and aired amazing performances by everyone from the Stones to the Eagles, to the Sex Pistols, to Sly and the Family Stone, to comedians like Steve Martin. MTV couldn't have been more of a polar opposite. They showed Thomas Dolby, She Blinded Me with Science, The Police, and Pat Benatar over and over. I would literally wait for hours to see a good song, and usually it would be either Prince or Van Halen. I felt the same way when I explored Sunset at Night. I saw a lot, I liked very little, and I was fucking bored the entire time. Oh my god, that's... Pinus. Steven, on the other hand, was in his element. He was all about what was going down on the strip because it was his chance to realize his rock star dreams. He'd never exhibited such ambition before. He did whatever it took to get into a club, to meet people, to make connections, and be in the mix to whatever degree possible. Steven posted up in the Rainbow parking lot every Friday and Saturday night, and he kept tabs on every band that ever played, as often as he did everything but give his balls to get himself inside. I rarely cared to go along, because I could never do what most often needed to be done. I was incapable of humiliating myself to go that extra mile, but I don't know why I had a problem hanging out around parking lots and stage doors, looking for any way in that might present itself. As a result, I was so infrequently present that Steven's never-ending morning after tales of incredible bands and hot chicks eventually got to me. But I never saw any of those mythical creatures that I decided to accompany him against my better judgment. I witnessed nothing but a string of evenings that never achieved epic status. One night that stands out started with Steven and me borrowing my mom's car. I was 17 at the time, I believe, to go to the Rainbow to mix it up. We drove down to Hollywood and walked up to the club and discovered that it was ladies' night. "That's fucking awesome," Steven shouted. I had gotten into the Rainbow for years thanks to my fake ID and Steady, the club's bouncer. He's still there and he still recognizes me. For whatever reason, though, Steady wasn't having it on this particular night. He let Steven in and sent me packing. "Nah, not you. Not tonight. Go home." "What?" I asked. I had no right to be indignant, but I was anyway. "What do you mean? I'm here all the time, man." "Yeah, I don't give a shit," he said. "Get out of here. You're not coming in tonight." I was so fucking pissed off I had nowhere else to go. So I followed Steady's orders and went home. I drowned my embarrassment in alcohol, and once I was good and drunk, I came up with the crazy idea to return to Rainbow dressed as a girl. It made complete sense in that special way that drunken plans do. I'd show Steady. I'd get in the club for free thanks to ladies' night. Then I'd fuck with Steven. Adler hit on every girl in sight, so I was sure he'd hit on me long before he realized who I was. My mom thought my plan was hilarious. She outfitted me with a skirt and fishnets, piled my hair up under a black beret, and did my makeup. I couldn't wear her shoes, but the outfit worked. So I looked like a chick. No, I looked like a rainbow chick. I drove back up to West Hollywood in my outfit. I parked a few blocks away on Doheny and walked into the club. I was both drunk and on a mission, so my inhibitions were non-existent. I sauntered up to Steady and nearly laughed in his face when he waved me in with no pause for ID. I was on top of the world. I had won, until I realized that Steven was nowhere to be found. It was like reaching the end of the roller coaster before the car had even gone over the first hill. The reality of the situation hit me square in the face. I was dressed as a girl in the middle of the Rainbow. Once I saw the light, I did the only sensible thing. I left. On the long walk back to my mom's car, I thought every shout was directed at me. I thought every laugh was at my expense. I thought to myself just how hard it must be to be a girl. Steven's girlfriend ran into Tommy Lee out on the town one night, and Tommy invited her down to Cherokee Studios to hang out and watch Motley record Theater of Pain, the follow-up to their breakthrough album, Shout at the Devil. Steve's girl thought nothing of inviting Yvonne, Steven, and me. I guess she figured that Tommy's invitation included a +3. Steven and I should have known better. The four of us headed down there, all ready to hang out and watch the proceedings. When we arrived, we were informed in no uncertain terms that the girls could go inside, which they did, but Steven and I could not. It was suggested that we go home. We were fuming. We watched our girlfriends head into the studio and spend the night in the 2 lounge chairs in the lobby, trying to be cool while we discussed what they might be doing in there. It was not a good scene. See, at that point, if your girl is willing to go without you, it's not your girl. You just pack your shit and fucking leave. Video paused. Continue watching. Fuck off. I'm not sure how, but somehow that experience didn't scar me enough to desert the notion of getting a job at Cherokee. I'd been pestering the studio's day manager to hire me for an entire year. I stopped by daily like clockwork during my lunch break at Hollywood Music across the street. I continued to do so, business as usual, but a few weeks later he finally gave in and offered me a job. In my mind, it was a milestone. I was now just one step away from becoming a professional musician. I was very wrong, but my plan was once I worked in a studio, I would make connections because I would meet musicians and producers every single day. In my mind, a studio was a place to meet other players who took it seriously, and by working there, at the very least, I'd get free recording time once I got a band together. With that kind of bullshit in my head, I quit Hollywood Music feeling like I'd just won the lottery. Welcome back. I was hired at Cherokee to be a gopher for the engineers, no more, no less. I didn't care. I showed up to my first day, ready to run errands, take out the trash, whatever, whenever, or so I thought. I visibly wilted when I discovered that my job for the week was to fetch whatever motley crew might need, day or night. Just over a week before, these same guys had refused to let me into the studio and might have had my girlfriend. I believed her when she said nothing happened, but still. And now I would have to spend the next few weeks as their errand boy. Great. The studio manager gave me $100 to fill Motley's first order, which I was sure was just the first of many. A magnum of Jack Daniels, a magnum of vodka, a few bags of chips, and a couple cartons of cigarettes. I looked down at the money as I walked outside into the sunlight, debating the pros and cons of swallowing my pride. It was a really nice day. I stopped when I got to the liquor store to think about this for a minute. Wow, you couldn't get one magnum of Jack Daniels, nonetheless, all the rest of that shit. Whatever. With $100. I squinted up at the sky. I stared at the sidewalk, and then I started walking again, toward home. That was all she wrote for Cherokee and me. Considering how many hours I've spent in professional recording facilities over the years, it's almost ridiculous that I've never set foot in Cherokee Studios. At this point, I have no intention of doing so. I owe those guys $100. The one day I did spend there taught me an invaluable lesson. However, I needed to pave my own way into the music business. It didn't matter that any idiot could fulfill the duties of fetching for Motley Crue, or anyone else for that matter. That job was something that I refused to do on principle. I'm glad that I did. It made it that much easier when Motley hired us to open for them a few years later. So I ditched Hollywood music, thinking that my studio job would be the last day job I'd ever have before I made it. Hardly. Things weren't looking too good for me at that point. I hadn't graduated high school, I wasn't going to college, and as far as I knew, I'd walked out on the only job that might have helped me on my way. I was unemployed and undirected there for a while, which was the perfect moment for my mom to get me into school again. Any school. God bless her perpetual commitment to getting me educated. This time, she did the only thing that made sense. She knew that I loved music, so she enrolled me in some weird vocational music school. I'm very disappointed in myself that I can't remember the name of this place, though I do remember how unfocused our teachers were. I'm now pretty sure that my mom found out about this place via a flyer at the laundromat. In any case, I enrolled, I showed up, and then within weeks my teachers had me out in the field laying cables and putting filters, gels they're called, over lights at various live venues. This place educated students in the arts of sound and light engineering for live performance in a very hands-on fashion. There were about 6 of us in my class, and almost immediately we were assisting techs on site at venues like the Country Club, the FM station, and various others in LA. Actually, it was a total sham. The school was clearly funded or run by the production company that put on these shows, so we, the students, were not only working for them for free, but they had also taken our tuition money. Shady as it was, I did learn to run light and sound for live concerts. I enjoyed it too, until the night I did the light show for a group of Duran Duran wannabes called Bang Bang. I realized 2 things. I watched their set. 1, it wasn't possible for a music performance to be more ridiculous, and 2, this sound and light gig was taking me nowhere fast. Why should you need a notification? You know 9 o'clock is the latest I'll usually start my stream. Ray, shame. Shame. I don't know why you need a notification. Fucking Twitch hates my guts. I got the Twitter. It's 9 o'clock. I think I started around 8:30, but then I took an immediate break because nobody was here talking. Then I came back and I drank some more. And because it's Toddler Tuesday, we forgot 9 p.m. comes. It's okay. It's only 6 days a week. I'll be alright. I'll live. Maybe I need to average 6 to 75 viewers or otherwise I'll die. I mean, I'm going to die either way, but, you know. You know, you know. You know, stop it.
But some can stop you in your tracks, like the tens of thousands of people who were diagnosed with certain HPV-related.
I was desperate to be in a band, so I combed the ads in the Recycler, LA's free musicians paper, every week, looking for an invitation to something that appealed to me. For the most part, it was futile. The ads were nothing but shredders seeking shredders. But one week, I saw an ad that intrigued me. It was a singer and guitarist looking for a fellow guitarist in the vein of Aerosmith and Hanoi Rocks. And more important, it expressly... Look, the view count said 1, and 1 means me, so that's when I fucking damn took a break. And remember, Cheetah, it's best to be nobody because nobody's perfect. And more important, it expressly stated that no beards or mustaches need apply. I called the number in the ad and made arrangements to meet them at this guest house they were renting on some street up in Laurel Canyon. Oh, Ray, you just got here. I showed up there with the girl I was dating and recognized Izzy immediately from the day he came into the music store with my Aerosmith drawing. Then I realized that the other guy must be that high-pitched singer I'd heard on tape. I thought, cool, this might actually go somewhere. Their little shack was more like a closet. There was room enough for a bed, with space to sit on the floor, and in front of it, room enough for a TV, which was the only source of light in there. I talked to Izzy for a while, but Axel never got off the phone, though he nodded his head in acknowledgments when I came into the room. At the time, I thought it was rude, but now that I know him, I understand that that wasn't the case. Hey, Wings! Oh. When Axel gets into a conversation, there's no stopping him. In Guns, we used to call it a Twain wreck. When Axel started telling a story, he was as long-winded as Mark Twain. That first meeting, though, was pretty uneventful. Either they decided that they were no longer interested in a second guitar player, or I just didn't look the part. Whatever the problem was, it went nowhere at all. Just like my stream. Whatever the problem is, it's going nowhere at all. Oh, shit. The minute Steven got back to Hollywood, he proudly informed me that he'd learned to play my drums. Oh, shit! Thanks for the sub! Yeah! No, thank you. I really do appreciate it. And, that $3 that I get out of that is going to go towards nothing responsible, I can assure you. The minute Steven got back to Hollywood, he proudly informed me that he'd learned to play drums at his mom's house out there in the valley, which I'm sure contributed to his being kicked out again. Steven was ready to start our band, even though at the time I was still half-heartedly playing with Titus Sloan and answering the odd ad in the newspaper looking for a guitar player. I didn't take him seriously. To me, Steven was my social director. Bit of a nuisance. He started coming to Titus Sloan rehearsals and every chance he got, he insisted that he was a better drummer than Adam Greenberg. When I eventually found myself without a band, Steven had annoyed me so much that I wasn't even willing to watch him play, let alone play with him. Well, let's see. When I do get mine, I'll make an effort to I mean, it might be something as ridiculous as this, right? Oh Jesus, is this right? You thought stepping on Legos was bad. The fuck is... Oh, that's the wipe for the thing. Steven's grandmother had given him her old blue Gremlin, a car that looks exactly like it sounds, stout and boxy. Apparently every day since he couldn't practice in his grandmother's house, he'd been loading his drum kit into this thing and driving out to the public park on Pico, across the street from 20th Century Fox Studios that includes a swimming pool and a golf course. I knew it well. I used to play soccer there when I was 9. As weird as it was, Steven would set up his drums next to a section of the walking path and just practice all afternoon and evening. I'm sure the seniors, joggers, ducks, and dog walkers were happy about it. A blonde rock kid is teased with teased out hair playing a full-size double-bass drum metal kit as hard as he can is bound to be a crowd pleaser in any setting. I am a child, but to be fair, in my defense, sea turtle. I mean, we were motherless for a little while, but I mean, honestly, I think between the myriad of chain-smoking babysitters that I had, the VCR is my mother. All the lessons I needed to learn was from the Breakfast Club and Rambo and A-Team and Dukes of Hazzard and Transformers and so on and so forth. But, you know, I will let nothing go, and I will wear my childhood on my sleeve loudly and proudly. You know, Chuck Norris, you know, peppering some Chuck Norris in there, and, you know, waffles. Oh! I eventually agreed to check him out, though I continue to wonder what the hell I was thinking as I drove out to meet him. It was completely dark when I got there. I parked next to his car, wandered out to the jogging path, and there he was, drumming away in the dark. He was backlit by the distant floodlights, while the huge expanse in the park and the golf course loomed behind him. It was a very weird scene. I took that in for a while before I even paid attention to his playing, but once I did, I forgot about the backdrop, sitting in the dark, watching Steven play. I wasn't convinced by his abilities, but I was satisfied. Besides, I didn't have a better option to open to me anyway. Steven and I were in a situation that was familiar and unwelcome. Well, I'm sorry, but, you know, talk to fucking YouTube and their copyright strike shit, and Twitch is... I haven't bought any knife in the past... It's been over a year since I bought a knife. Why would you attack me like that? I spent money when I had it. Now that I don't have money, I'm still spending money. Don't worry about it. Sitting there in the dark, I watched Steven play. I wasn't convinced of his abilities, but I was satisfied. Besides, I didn't have a better option to me anyway. Steven and I were in a situation that was familiar and unwelcome. We were looking for a singer, and this time a bass player as well. Steven wasn't an asset in that regard because he knew all the players. He was out so much that he'd seen nearly every band there was to see in LA rock scene at the time. Steven was also up on the gossip. Once Motley Crue took off, Steven heard that Lizzie Gray, Nikki Sixx's co-founder in London, intended to put that band back together. That was huge. Steven and I had seen London when we were younger, and they blew our minds. Izzy Stradlin was in that second version of London, but once he left, things fell apart a bit, and there was a vacancy for a guitar player and a drummer. Steven and I auditioned for them at the space where the legendary funk band War used to rehearse and record on Sunset, down the street from Denny's. This is Slash, yeah. Where is he? Well, we're talking about Steven right now, Steven Adler. We're working our way slowly but surely to guns. We're not there yet. By this time, that spot was nothing but a bombed-out hovel. Today, it's where the Guitar Center Hollywood is, by the way. So we rehearsed there with London for 4 days. We learned a ton of their songs, and even though it was a step up from nowhere, nothing came of it. If anything, the experience was interesting because I saw firsthand just how pompous those who believe themselves to be rock stars can be. The guys in London behaved like they were larger than life, as if Steven and me and everyone else in the world existed on the other side of an invisible fence. It took me back to my childhood and all the rock stars that I'd met through my parents. God damn it, these fucking ads. Fuck you, game. Or fuck you, YouTube. It took me back to my childhood and all the rock stars that I'd met back through my parents. Growing up around my mom and dad's clients and friends, I'd seen it all and learned how to act and how not to act. I'd seen real rock stars throw temper tantrums and watched my mom deal with them. I'd learned through observation just how delicately to treat those personality types. No. Bless it. I fucking hate this shit. I'll just turn the music down some. How's that? Is that better? I just want something other than my beautiful baritone. At the time, I thought the guys in London were worldly and I was intimidated and impressed. Not so much now. I mean, he would drown me out and it would just be cricket going rah rah rah. He wouldn't do it anyways. Not so much now. I saw the guy who was singing for them at the time on the street in early 2007 while I was driving to the studio to record with Velvet Revolver. There he was, cruising down Sunset Boulevard wearing the same getup, still looking for a gig. Well, that might be an interesting feature. He wouldn't even have to be on camera. Well, I mean, you know what? I might as well suck start a Glock while we're fucking at it. You know, it's like, well, shit. Yes, drum. I mean, this is EDM, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I would love to play rock music in the background, especially GNR. But once again, I'm trying not to get fucking canceled. They're definitely on top of that shit. Heaven forbid a fucking small streamer try to fucking damn do something, but you know, they're like, that doesn't even fall under cancel culture. That falls under fucking damn litigious culture. Fucking everybody suing everybody. And I'm like, oh yes, because the buckets of money that I got coming in for my fucking 4-person stream, it's there, man. Penis. At the time, I thought guys in London were worldly, blah, blah, blah. After that fruitless endeavor, Steve and I struck out on our own. We needed a bass player and a singer, but we figured we'd go about things logically and lend ourselves a bassist first, so when we began auditioning singers, we'd actually have a whole band for them to sing over. We took out an ad in the recycler. It was in the seeking section, and it went something like this: bass player needed for band influenced by Aerosmith, Alice Cooper, call Slash. We got a few calls, but the only guy we wanted to meet was someone named Duff. He just moved out from Seattle and sounded cool on the phone, so I told him to meet us at Cantor's Deli at 8 p.m. Steve and I got a corner booth right near the front. We had our girls with us. My girlfriend Yvonne had a big bottle of vodka and a brown paper bag in her purse. She was the one who introduced me to vodka. Actually, before I met her, I drank nothing but whiskey. No one remotely resembling a musician came into Cantor's Deli for a long while, and the girls were definitely drunk when Duff did show up. I think the four of us were debating what he might look like when this bone-skinny 6-foot-plus guy with short spiked blonde hair rolled in wearing a Sid Vicious-style chain and padlock around his neck, combat boots, and a red and black leather trench coat, in spite of the 75-degree weather. No one had predicted that. I kicked Steven and hushed the girls. Check it out, I said. This has to be him. Duff had been in a series of punk rock bands in Seattle, the seminal but mostly overlooked outfit The Farts, with a Z, for whom he'd played guitar, the legendary pre-grunge power quartet, the Fastbacks, drums, and a few others. Just before moving out to LA, he had taken up bass. Duff was as musically versatile as he was driven. He didn't leave Seattle because he wasn't creatively satisfied. He left Seattle because he knew the scene, at the time at least, was a losing proposition and he wanted to make it. He knew that Los Angeles was a West Coast music capital, so without a plan and with no friends waiting to take him in, he packed up his beat-up red Chevy Nova and drove down to LA to make a name for himself. I respected him immediately for his devotion. He and I shared a similar work ethic. It established a kinship between us right away that hasn't faltered at all over these years. So you're Slash, Duff said as he squeezed himself in beside me in our booth at Cantor's. You're not what I expected at all. Oh yeah, I said? What were you expecting? Well, with a name like Slash, I thought you'd be a much scarier man, he said. Steven and the girls all laughed. I'm not even kidding. I expect you to be some kind of punk rock psychopath with a name like that. Oh yeah, I said, smirking. We shared a laugh. If that hadn't broken the ice, my girlfriend Yvonne made sure to smash it in a few minutes later. We'd sort of settled into small talk. Duff was getting to know us and vice versa when, apropos of nothing, Yvonne leaned across me and put her hand on Duff's shoulder. Can I ask you a personal question? She said louder than necessary. Yeah, he said. Sure. Are you gay? I'm just curious. For the first time in hours, our table was silent. What can I say? I've always been attracted to outspoken women. No, Duff said. I'm definitely not gay. After that exchange, we faded. The five of us went upstairs, piled into the bathroom, and broke out the vodka. Not long after that, we formed a band right then and there. And once again, spent the next month or so looking for a singer. We auditioned Ron Reyes, better known as Chavo Pederast, when he was the front man for Black Flag for a few months back in 1979. There are a few other characters as well, but as usual, we couldn't find the right guy. All things considered, we wrote some really cool material. We came up with the main riff to the song that later became Rocket Queen, and a few more great ideas. Despite the creativity flowing between the three of us, I began to get really frustrated with Steven. He never kept up with the dedicated work ethic that Duff and I shared, though he maintained twice the social schedule. It was so aggravating to watch him spend his energy on partying when we had so much to do. At the time, it was obvious that we should find the right singer. We would really have a band that was worth something. The problem was, we didn't have a singer, but Steven was behaving as if we'd already been signed by a major label. In the end, I was the one who broke up the band. I told Duff it just wasn't working, and I broke it off with Steven in every way for a while, too. Duff went on to greener pastures. Coincidentally, when he'd moved to Los Angeles, he got an apartment on Orange Avenue, directly across the street from Izzy. Soon enough, those two ran into each other on the street, and that was that. Duff became a player in the LA Guns / Hollywood Rose universe. Those were the only two bands coming up behind Motley Crue that were worthy of note, LA Guns and Hollywood Rose, each of which were revolving door outfits that shared a number of local players to an incestuous degree. LA Guns was founded by Tracy Guns, who had gone to Fairfax High with me. That band was nothing but a tighter, harder version of the sleazy blues shredding he played at keg parties back then. Well, I'm sure you know the origin of Guns N' Roses' name, but anyways. Hollywood Rose was something else. I met up with Steven just after he'd seen them. As he described their high-pitched singer, a guy who could tear the roof off. I realized that for once, Steven wasn't exaggerating. I didn't put it together that I'd already heard this guy, probably because I'd heard him on what is most likely the shittiest lo-fi recording of a live band that had ever been made. Steve and I went to Hollywood Rose at Gazzari's, and it was the first time that I beheld, hands down, the best singer in Hollywood at the time, W. Axl Rose. Much like the tape, the show was nothing more than an amateur garage band doing their best, but they had an amazing sense of reckless abandon and unbridled energy. At least two of them did. Apart from Izzy and Axl, the band was pretty nondescript. But those two friends from Lafayette, Indiana, had an ominous presence about them. Izzy kept doing knee slides all over the stage, and Axl screaming his fucking heart out. Their performance was blistering. Axl's voice drew me in immediately. It was so versatile, and underneath his impossibly high-pitched shrieking, the bluesy natural rhythm he had was riveting. As I said, Hollywood Rose, like LA Guns, was a revolving door band whose players all knew one another and were always coming or going. Bass player Steve and Darrow worked with Izzy, delivering the LA weekly during the afternoon, so they were tight. But Axl didn't seem to like guitar player Chris Webber for whatever reason. Axl apparently up and fired Chris without telling anyone else, and somehow Steven heard that they were holding auditions for guitar players the next day. It's all as vague and illogical to me now as it was then, but Steven convinced me to show up at their rehearsal space, which there was a room in some hovel called Fortress on Selma and Highland. The place was the epitome of ratty Hollywood punk, only because only punk rockers would have thought to trash it so extensively. Rock guys don't trash things until they've made it and are older. Only punks do that out of the gate. I'm not sure what color it was originally, but the carpet at Fortress had turned a sick yellow-brown, not only on the floor, but all the way up the walls and ceiling, where it had been installed to dampen the noise. Every corner was disgusting. The entire room was a lice-infested cube. Oh, man. Fire! That's right. I started rehearsing with them, and it was going fine until Izzy took off during the second song. Now I know that bolting is Izzy's defense mechanism when he thinks things aren't going quite right. He never makes a show of it. He just slips out and won't look back. Apparently Izzy had no idea what I was doing there that day, and understandably didn't like it that Axel had fired Chris Webber without consulting him or even informing him. Eventually, a while later, we'd become good friends. I asked Izzy about it. Izzy always maintained an aura of cool. He was never ruffled. He never let that guard down. But when I asked him about this, he leveled a deathly serious gaze at me, so I had no doubt that he was sincere. It's pretty fucking simple, he said. I just don't like being dictated to under any circumstances. Speed Racer? What? The fuck are you talking about, Speed Racer? What? You're gonna have to elaborate, cause what? In any case, he split. I'd been dragged into the middle of that situation entirely clueless to it. After Izzy left, there was a short awkward moment, and then we just started playing again. I didn't even know that there was another concentric circle of tension around the move to bring me in. Tracy Guns had been vying for that gig. He'd been trying to recruit Axel and Izzy into a band for quite a while. I can't imagine that he was excited to hear that they'd chosen me over him. I had no idea about any of this, and even if I had, I would have ignored all of it anyway. Finally, I was in a band with a great singer, or a singer at all. The last Hollywood Rose gig took place at the Troubadour, and it ended eventfully. It was an off night all around, basically a series of almost right moments. We went on late, and everything sounded terrible. The crowd was rowdy and disengaged, and no matter how hard we tried, there was no turning the vibe around. Some heckler in the front row antagonized Axel, and soon he'd had enough. He threw a glass at the guy or broke a bottle on his head. It doesn't matter which. But it was a fitting expression of the pent-up frustration within the band that night. As I watched the altercation with this guy build throughout the set, it took a big distraction during the show that I knew I was going to quit as soon as the set was done. Axel was going after him like affirmation from the universe. No Speed Racer. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Cheetah. You crazy, girl. It's not like I hadn't seen it coming. I wasn't satisfied, and the whole situation didn't seem very stable. We'd had only a handful of gigs in a few months we'd been together, and the lineup never felt quite right. By that point, it didn't take much, and the bottle scene seemed very uncalled for. It distracted from the music, to say the least. Here we were, a fledgling band with enough internal issues to scratch out a name for ourselves, having to contend with incidents like that. It meant something to Axel, of course, but not everyone necessarily agreed with him. It was the way he felt, and seriously, if it was called for, fine. But sometimes you gotta pick your battles. Stopping the show to deal with the situation was a bit much. In the spirit of rock and roll, I had an appreciation for the full-on fuck you, but as far as professionalism was concerned, it was an issue for me. Axel is a dramatic kind of individual. Everything he says or does has a meaning, a theatrical place in his mind, in a blown out of proportion kind of way. Little things become greatly exaggerated, so then interactions with people can become magnified into major issues. The bottom line is, he has his own way of looking at things. I'm a pretty easygoing guy, so I'm told, so when Axel would fly off the handle, I never followed suit. I'd be like, what? And blow it off. There were such dramatic highs and lows and extreme mood swings that being close to him always felt like a roller coaster ride. And what I didn't know then was that this would be a recurring theme. Really? In any event, I told everyone in Hollywood Rose that I quit as soon as we got off stage. The band split up after that, and Axl and I parted ways for a while. He went on to join Tracy Guns and LA Guns, which soon became the earliest incarnation of Guns N' Roses. I went on to join a band called Black Sheep with Willie Bass. Bass? I don't know. I don't know the guy, so I don't. Sorry, Willie Bass? We'll go with Bass. Which was a rite of passage for a succession of talented musicians. Willie is a great frontman. He's a really tall black guy who sings and plays bass. And he had a penchant for landing the hottest shredder guitar players of the day, one after another. He'd had Paul Gilbert, a virtuoso, Yugi Malmsteen type, Mitch Perry, who'd played with Michael Schenker, and for a time me. Shredding was not my forte. I could play fast, but I valued classic rock and roll Chuck Berry style playing over heavy metal showboating. I took the gig anyway because after Hollywood Rose, I realized that getting out there and being noticed was essential. It was a way to meet other players and learn about other opportunities in a fashion that suited my personality more than networking on the strip. I took the gig and played to about 800 people out at the country club in the valley, and it was a particularly good show, I must say. It was also the first time I'd ever played to so many. I enjoyed the exposure, though I remembered thinking that I'd played terribly. I found out later that Axl was there, but I had no idea at the time because he didn't come up and say hello. Black Sheep wasn't really doing much by this point. After one gig, we didn't have any others booked. We just get together and rehearse now and again. My brief experience with them might not have been exactly what I wanted to do, but it did make me more public, so it seemed to me that if playing in a well-liked LA club band was winning me attention and putting my career on some kind of track, joining the biggest LA club band of the day might not have been a bad idea at all. Poison's guitar player Matt Smith called me when he decided that he was going to leave the band. His wife was pregnant, and they decided to move back to Pennsylvania to start their family. Matt and I had friends in common, and he invited me to a few of Poison's parties. Matt was a good guy. He was down to earth, the least poisonous of the bunch. Matt knew that it wasn't my thing at all, but he said it was a good gig that paid well, and I already knew the band was definitely in demand. I was pretty against it, but Matt talked me into trying out. Poison rehearsed in a big flat way down in Venice on Washington and La Brea or something like that, which was plastered with posters of themselves. I showed up to the audition wearing my typical uniform, jeans, t-shirt, and that day a pair of these really cool moccasins that I stole from the farmer's market. God damn it, Slash. They weren't beaded, just really plain brown leather with short fringe around the ankle. I had learned 4 or 5 songs from a tape they'd given me, and I just killed them when we ran through it all. They called me back for a second audition, and I remembered Bobby Dahl, the bass player, looking me over as I played. The vibe was different. Was there a tangible attention to detail? There was a tangible attention to detail. So, like, what do you wear? He asked me. You don't wear those shoes on stage, do you? I haven't given it much thought, to tell you the truth, I said. He looked concerned and confused. I was one of the 3 that they were deciding on, and I saw another guy at the callback that day. He had platinum blonde hair, a sparkly white leather jacket, and full makeup, complete with frosted pink lipstick. I got one look at him on the way out and knew that he'd get the gig. He did, of course. It was C.C. DeVille. I had played the shit out of Poison material, but that was the one and only way that I was perfect fit for what they were all about. C.C. DeVille, man, you can't compete with that shit. Not for that band. In 1984, Axl helped me get a job at Tower Video, and when he did it, it was bittersweet to see him again. When Hollywood Rose broke up, it wasn't exactly acrimonious, but in the interim, another source of contention had come between us. Axl had hooked up with my then ex, Yvonne. I had met Yvonne through Mark Cantor at a Rat concert where they were playing with Yugi Malmsteen at the Hollywood Palladium. She'd actually been Rat frontman Stephen Piercy's girlfriend at one time. We went out to a late night dinner afterward at this place, the Beverly Hills Cafe. That was one of Mark's favorite spots, and that's where we got eyes for each other. We started dating after that. Yvonne was really cool. She was the person who turned me on to Hanoi Rocks and the front man, Mike Monroe, which was a band that I definitely appreciated. They were an influence on Guns N' Roses, and we are still an undervalued rock and roll institution as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, Yvonne and I dated for a while, but during one of those spells, we took some time off from each other. Axel fucked her. I was not happy about that at all, but I can't say that I was surprised because it was obvious that he'd always had a thing for her. When she and I got back together, of course, she had to tell me about it under the guise of being honest, when the real motivation was probably revenge for my dumping her. I called Axel at his job at Tower Video to confront him. I was just pissed.
Hello, motherfucker.
Well, hello to you too, buddy. You fucked Yvonne, I said. What kind of cheap shot is that? I had to give Axel credit. He was honest and didn't try to weasel his way out of it. He told me that, of course, he did. But that at the time, I wasn't fucking her, so what did it matter? Fair enough, Axel. Fair enough. I didn't quite see it the same way, so things escalated from there until he invited me to try and kick his ass. I was going to go up there and duke it out, but I let it go. Needless to say, it took some time to diffuse the animosity. And one day, after hearing I was looking for a job, he told me about an opening at Tower as a peacemaking gesture. Axel chose to patch things up with grand gestures. Tower Video was located directly across the street from the Tower Records, where I'd been busted shoplifting a few years earlier. Axel was living with one of the managers, and once I joined the ranks, it didn't take me long to figure out that I was one of a truly loony cast of colorful characters. I imagine we were the most ludicrous and utterly negligent staff that any Tower location has ever employed. There were also some great senile alcoholics who worked at Tower Classical next door. Every night at about 8 o'clock, after the general manager for records and video left for the night, those of us in video would stock up at the liquor store across the street, throw porno videos on the store's video system, and just drink. We'd put our friends' bands on the stereo and generally ignore every customer that wandered in. I'm not even mad at it. It wasn't anything that the security cameras picked up because we didn't have vodka bottles next to the cash register, so it went on unnoticed for a long time. I imagine, though, that if those tapes were viewed, we'd come off as lazy and unhelpful. We'd mix our cocktails in the back office and walk around with them in plastic Solo cups. We'd be ringing up any purchases with one hand around a screwdriver. I'm sure the customers knew what we were up to the moment we breathed on them. But nobody ever complained because they were shocked speechless. All things considered, we were way too scary for most people. They just got out of there as quickly as they could. Unfortunately, one of the tighter-assed managers caught on to us when we did, and when he did, Axel took the fall. He was fired for the antics that we were all guilty of. Even then, I knew why. Axel was the kind of presence and star power that threatens authority figures. They see someone like Axel as nothing but a ringleader. I may know about that a little bit, but shh. We're not talking about me. We're talking about Slash and Axel. The fuck did everybody go? My memory is hazy on the various events that led to the forming of Guns N' Roses because, to be honest, for most of it, I wasn't there. I'm not here to present the academic history of the band or set straight every misconception. I can only speak of my experience. In any case, sometime in early 1985, Axel and Tracy Gunn started putting a band together. They brought in Old Bench and Rob Gardner, who played bass and drums, respectively, in LA Guns. Not too long after that, Izzy joined their group, and that is when Axel opted to change the name to Guns N' Roses for obvious reasons. Tracy had finally gotten his dream situation. As I said, he'd been after Axel and Izzy to be in a band with him for quite a while. They did a few gigs, they wrote a few songs, in that order. I'm drinking a mixed whiskey blend, tin cup. American whiskey. Comes with the tin cup. Comes with the tin cup. Cut with Rocky Mountain water. 84 proof. It's nice and light and smooth. I'm not mad at it. On that note, cheers. Cheers. I was still working at Tower. I had nothing else going on. Rocky Mountain, not Appalachian Mountains. No, God no. I don't drink pee. I'm pretty fucking vanilla. I ain't into that freak show shit. Oh. I was still working at Tower and had nothing else going on. I was envious to say the least when Izzy came in to give me a flyer for Guns N' Roses show in Orange County. Somewhere along the line, Duff replaced Ole. They did a few more gigs and wrote a few more songs. I believe that during those Orange County shows, Tracy and Axel had a major falling out. Tracy quit pretty soon afterward, and then one night Axel showed up at Tower to ask if I'd be interested in hooking up with Izzy to write some songs and give the gig a go. I stopped for a moment to think about what that meant. Axel and Izzy were a unit, so any other players coming into their band had to work well with both of them, and Izzy left Hollywood Rose too quickly to get to know me at all. I liked Izzy. He was, after all, the first guy I met, and I enjoyed his style and I admired his talent. In dealing directly with Izzy, I'd have something to offer. I have something of a buffer with Axel, Jesus Christ. Axel and I got along in so many ways, but we had innate personality differences. We were attracted to each other and worked together tremendously well, yet we were a study in polar opposites. Izzy and later Duff would help. At the time, Izzy was enough to take the pressure off. I showed up at Izzy's apartment a few days later, and he was working on a song called Don't Cry, which I immediately took to. I wrote some guitar parts for it, and we fine-tuned it for the rest of the evening. It was a cool session. We both got a lot out of jamming with each other. We found ourselves a rehearsal space in Silver Lake. Duff, Izzy, Axel, Rob Gardner, and myself. Everyone knew one another, so we started throwing songs together that evening, and it just gelled quickly. It was one of those truly magic moments that musicians speak of, where every other player naturally complements the other and a group becomes an organic collective. I had never felt that intensely in my life. It was all about the kind of music I was into. Ratty rock and roll like old Aerosmith, AC/DC, Humble Pie, and Alice Cooper. Everyone in the band wore their influences on their sleeves, and there was not a bit of the typical LA vibe going on, where the goal is to court a record deal. There was no concern for the proper poses or goofy choruses that might spell pop chart success, which ultimately guaranteed endless hot chicks. That type of calculated rebellion wasn't an option for us. We were too rabid, a pack of musically minded gutter rats. We were passionate with a common goal and a very distinct sense of integrity. That was the difference between us and them. You know, I'm not saying that a song has to finish, but dear YouTube, fuck you. I don't know if I've said that enough, but I'm definitely on the track to not being monetized by YouTube ever. How many subscribers do I have on YouTube? Like 4? Ray, have you clicked on my YouTube channel? Have you hit subscribe? Yeah, maybe YouTube will give you notifications better than Twitch. Hey Nate, are you having problems with Twitch? Is that why you're on YouTube? Up Visley's. I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Well, I still don't know what Visley's is, so it doesn't really matter. Ah. Is it time for a quick break? I think it might be time for a quick break. I'm saying it might be time for a quick break. Oh, okay. I'm constantly doing the hydrate. Did you redeem a hydrate? Oh, okay. Well, just in case, this is specifically for your hydrate. Nate, we gotta make text notification sounds for both YouTube and Twitch. Cheers, Wings. Oh, there's your hydrate right there. Oh, okay. Well, on that note, quick break. Be right back. 5 minutes. And I'm Wilford Brimley, here to talk to you about diabetes. Grape Gatorade, what's weird about it? You know what? I'm sure you'll elaborate. Oh, is that some kind of thing for the Stones? Is it not Pedialyte? Oops, what? Stupid Stones.
Front door open.
Front door open. Penises. So fucking serious. So fucking angry looking. It's just my face, man. Stop judging me. Chapter 6. 6. Zex. Hot. That's all the languages. Oh, yeah, that's all the languages I know to say the number 6. Oh, thanks. Thanks for standing by. We weren't exactly the type of people who took no for an answer. We weren't much more likely to give no for an answer. As individuals, each of us was street smart, self-sufficient, and used to doing things his way only. Death before compromise. When we became a unit, that quality multiplied by 5, we'd have one another's backs as fiercely as we'd stood up for ourselves. All 3 of the common definitions of the word gang definitely applied to us. Warner Brothers. We're a group who associated closely for social reasons such as delinquent behavior. We're a collection of people who, with compatible tastes and mutual interests, who gathered to work together. And 3, we're a group of persons who associated for criminal or other antisocial purposes. We had a gang sense of loyalty too. We only trusted our oldest friends and found everything we needed to get by in one another. Well, our group willpower drove us to succeed on our own terms, but never made the ride any easier. We were unlike the other bands of the day. We didn't take kindly to criticism from anyone. Not our peers, not the charlatans that tried to sign us to unfair management contracts, not the A&R reps vying to hand us a deal. We did nothing to court acceptance, and we shunned easy success. We waited for our popularity to speak for itself and the industry to take notice. And when it did, we made them pay. We rehearsed every day, working up songs we knew we liked from other bands like Move to the City and Reckless Life. We all get old, and sometimes our metabolism does not keep up with our former selves. Either that or cocaine gets expensive. Maybe it's a combination of both. Which were written by some version or another of Hollywood Rose. We had a piece of shit PA, so we composed most of the music without Axel singing with us. He'd sing under his breath and listen and provide feedback on what we were talking about in the arrangements. Cocaine is a hell of a drug. Fucking Chappelle Show was a shit. Oh, rest in peace there, super freak. After 3 nights, we had a fully realized set that included Don't Cry and Shadow of Your Love, so we unanimously decided that we were now fit for public consumption. We could have booked a gig locally because collectively we all knew the right people. But no, we decided that after 3 rehearsals we were ready for a tour. We're not going for a weekend tour of clubs close to LA. We took Duff up on his offer to book us a jaunt that stretched from Sacramento all the way up to his hometown of Seattle. It was completely improbable, but to us it seemed like the most sensible idea in the world. We planned to pack the gear up and leave in a few days, but our zeal scared the shit out of our drummer, Rob Gardner, so much he more or less quit the band on the spot. It didn't surprise anyone because Rob could play well enough but didn't fit in from the start. He wasn't of the same ilk. He wasn't one of us. He just wasn't the sell your soul for rock and roll type. It was a polite departure. We couldn't imagine anyone who had played those last 3 rehearsals not wanting to tour the coast as an unknown band with nothing but our gear and the clothes on our backs, but we accepted his decision. We would not be stopped, however, so I called out the one drummer I knew who would leave that night if we asked him to, Steven Adler. Right? Definitely for the altitude. We watched as Steven set up both of his silver blue bass drums and loosened up with a few typical double bass fills at rehearsal the next day. His aesthetic touchstones were off, but it wasn't an insurmountable problem. It was a situation rectified in a typically Guns fashion when Steven ducked out to take a piss. Izzy and Duff hid one of his bass drums, a floor tom, and some small rack toms. Steven returned, sat down, and started counting in the next song before he realized what was missing. Oh my goodness, that's fucking hilarious. Let's just hide half his drum kit. It's fine. Hey, where's my other bass drum? He asked, looking around as if he dropped them on the way to the bathroom or something. I came here with 2, and my other drums. Don't worry about it, man. You don't need them. Just count off the song, Izzy said. One of us, right? Steven never got his extra bass drum back, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Of the 5 of us, he was the most conventionally contemporary, which, all things considered, lent a key element to our sound. But we weren't going to let him hammer that point home all night long. We bullied him into being a straight-head 4/4 rock and roll drummer, which complemented and easily locked in with Duff's bass style, while allowing Izzy and me the freedom to mesh blues rock-driven rock and roll with the neurotic edge of this first-generation punk. Not to mention what Axl's lyrics and delivery brought to it. Axl had a unique voice. It was brilliant in range and tone, but even though it was often intense and in your face, it had an amazingly beautiful, soulful, bluesy quality to it because he had a choir background from beginning in church when he was in grade school. By the end of his tryout, Steven was hired and the original Guns N' Roses lineup was locked and loaded. Duff had booked the tour. All that we needed was wheels. Anyone who knows a musician well, successful or otherwise, knows this. Generally, they are adept at borrowing from their friends. It took one phone call and very minor convincing for us to enlist our friends Danny and Joe, whose car and loyalty we made use of very regularly. To sweeten the deal, we christened Danny our tour manager and Joe our roadie. The next morning, drove Danny's weathered green tank of an Oldsmobile out to the valley to pick up a U-Haul trailer that we filled with amps, guitars, and drum kit. 7 of us packed into this mid-70s Olds and set out on what I don't think anyone but Duff realized was a trip over 1,000 miles. We were outside of Fresno, 200 miles from LA, and 200 short of Sacramento, when the car broke down. Fuck. Danny wasn't the type of guy to have splurged for AAA, so luckily we broke down within pushing distance of a gas station where we discovered it would take 4 days to get the necessary parts to fix a beast that old. At that rate, we wouldn't make any of the shows. Our enthusiasm was too great to allow for delays or thoughts of practicality, so we told Danny and Joe to stay with the car and gear until it was repaired and meet us in Portland, about 750 miles away. At one of the gigs en route from there, we decided we'd drive to Seattle together, about 175 miles further, to play the final show of our tour with our own gear. There was a brief moment when Danny and Joe campaigned for us to remain in Fresno together until the car was back on the road. But neither that nor the obvious option of turning back were ever considered seriously. We hadn't even considered how to get from one gig to the next, let alone that we might not find amps and drums ready to borrow when we got there. We really didn't give a shit about any of that. The 5 of us didn't hesitate. We hit the highway to start hitchhiking. How do you hitchhike with a full drum kit? Whatever. We gave Danny and Joe whatever money we could spare to pay for the car, probably about $20. And we walked on the on-ramp to the highway, guitar cases in hand. A few hours without so much as one vehicle, even slowing down to check us out, didn't dent our confidence. We remained proactive, testing the efficiency of the various hitchhiking configurations available to us. 5 guys with no visible luggage, 2 guys hitching, and 3 guys hidden in the bushes. 1 guy with a guitar case, just Axel and Izzy. Just Izzy and me, just Axel and me. Steven, waving and grinning, just us alone. Nothing seemed to work. The people of Fresno weren't having us in any way, shape, or form. It took about 6 hours for our kind of misfit to come along, a trucker willing to take all of us on board, stuffed into the front seat and the small bench behind in his cab. It was close quarters, made even closer by the guitar cases and the sheer intensity of this guy's speed habit. Ooh, nice. He shared his stash with us sparingly, which he made endless stories of life on the road more digestible. The 5 of us were all pretty cynical and sarcastic, so in the beginning, we thought we were thoroughly amused by this guy's insanity. Oh my fuck! Really? Just keep on fucking playing. You promised me 3 hours of fucking damn playing. Keeps on fucking pausing. Jesus Christ. It's not even... Okay, it's been a minute. It took about 6 hours for our kind of misfit to come along, a trucker, blah, 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 blah. He shared his stash with us sparingly, which made his endless stories of life on the road more digestible. The 5 of us were pretty cynical and sarcastic, so in the beginning, we were thoroughly amused by this guy's insanity. As that night, the next day, the day after, came screaming down the road at us through the windshield, there wasn't any place else I thought I'd rather be. When we'd pull over at rest stops so this guy could sleep for a while in the back of his cab, which was inconsistent amount of time, lasting from an hour and a half a day, we'd crash on park benches, write songs as the sun came up, or just walk around kicking trash at squirrels. I suppose that's a thing. After a couple of days of this, our chauffeur started to smell particularly pungent, and his formerly affable, strung-out chatter seemed to turn darkly weird. We were soon collectively disenchanted. He informed us that he planned to take a detour to pick up some more speed from his old lady, who I guess drove out to meet him at regular spots on his route just to keep him juiced up. It didn't look like the situation was bound to improve. The next time he pulled into a rest stop to take one of his endless naps, we were too bored and broke to stick it out any longer. We decided to explore our options by hitting the blacktop to again look for a ride, figuring that if worst came to worst, the speed demon in the semi would find us and pick us up again whenever he woke up. He probably wouldn't even think we ditched him. Our prospects weren't plentiful because, among the 5 of us, not one of us bore an iota of mainstream appeal. From Duff's red and black leather trench coat to our black leather jackets, long hair, and a few days of road grime, I have no idea how long we waited, but eventually we hailed a ride from 2 chicks in a pickup truck with a shell. They drove us to the outskirts of Portland, and once we got within the city limits, all was well. Duff's friend from Donner from Seattle had sent someone who informed us that Danny and Joe had called ahead. Apparently the car was too unreliable to make the trip, so they headed back to LA. It's not like we cared. We were forging on, even though we'd missed every single gig along the way. It didn't matter to us as long as we had a shot at making our final show of the tour. It was scheduled to take place in Seattle, and what was meant to be our last gig became the first Guns N' Roses show that ever was. You're on the jungle, baby! Alright. Yeah. Arriving in Seattle was especially victorious, both because we'd actually made it. That last drive came off with no problems, and also because Donner's house was the closest thing I'd seen to Animal House. The day we rolled in, they threw a barbecue in our honor that, as far as I could tell, never seemed to end. It was as raging when we dragged ourselves out of there as it had been when everyone cheered the 5 strangers from LA who came through their door. There was an endless supply of pot, a ton of booze, and people sleeping, tripping, or fucking in every corner. It was a fitting Guns N' Roses after show party that started before our first show. You know how that works, right? Fucking in every corner. Those were the days. We arrived at Donner's house a handful of hours before we were supposed to be on stage. We had nothing but our guitars, so we really needed to find ourselves equipment. As I said before moving to LA, Duff had played in legendary Seattle punk bands, so he could pull in some favors. He gave Lulu Gargiulo of the Fastbacks a call, and she came through for us by loaning us their drum kit and amps. She personally made the first Guns N' Roses show possible, and I'd like to thank her right now once again. Oh, man. The club was called Guerrilla Gardens, which was the epitome of a punk rock show shithole. It was dank and dirty and smelled of stale beer. It was situated right on the water on an industrial wharf that it lent it a vaguely maritime feel, but not in a picturesque wooden dock manner at all. That place was at the end of a concrete slab. It was the kind of setting where deals get made in East Coast gangster movies, and on top of all of that, it was cold and raining outside the night we played there. We just got up, did our set, and the crowd was neither hostile nor gracious. We probably played 7 or 8 songs, Moved to the City, Reckless Life, Heartbreak Hotel, Shout Over Your Love, and Anything Goes among them, and it went by pretty quickly. That night we were a raw interpretation of what the band was. Once the nervous energy subsided, at least for me, we'd reached the end of the set. That said, we had a very small number of train wrecks in the arrangements, and all in all, the gig was pretty good. Until we had to collect our money. Then it became as much of an uphill battle as the rest of our early career would be. The club owner refused to pay us the $150 we were promised. We tackled this obstacle as we had the entire road trip as a group. We broke down our gear, got it packed up outside the club, and cornered this guy in his office. Duff talked to him while we crowded around, looking formidable and throwing in a couple threats for good measure. We blocked the door and held him hostage until he finally coughed up $100 for our cash, and he had some bullshit excuse about why he was shorting us $50. That was just dumb fucking luck. We didn't get to the bottom of it at all, so we took the $100 and split. Oh my god, they went through all that for $20. What the shit? But there's a lot of clubs that won't pay you at all. They'll say, they gave you the space to play for the experience. The experience. I understand it's not about the money, but god damn. I'm sure the parts for that fucking damn busted ass fucking vehicle cost more than fucking $20. Right, sell your soul for rock and roll, and that's. But I mean, I'm sure they made some money after that. But there's one image that I might have of our days in Seattle that sums it all up to me. It is an upside down TV. I remember lying with half my body half on the bed, my head hung over the end of the pull-out couch so far the top was against the floor. There were equally rotted people that I didn't know lying on both sides of me. And I was so stoned that I thought I'd found the best position in the world that a body might ever be in. The blood rushed to my brain as I dangled there watching the abominable Dr. Phibes starring Vincent Price, and there wasn't anything else I wanted to do. Bro, this stream is never going anywhere, and it's just a matter of time before I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm so close to it. There's so much time and effort. Business cards and After a couple of days of after partying at Donner's house, we hopped back in the car and with his friend, whom we'll call Jane. She was either crazy or just liked us enough to drive all the way back to LA. I'm still not sure which. We drove through Sacramento, which is about 750 miles before we made our first pit stop. That's impressive. By that point, we had to pause. Jane wasn't the type to have a car with functioning air conditioning, and considering the summertime heat, it might have been lethal to keep going by at that point. We parked and spent the afternoon wandering around the state capital area, begging for change to get something to eat. After a few hours, we took our earnings and hit the McDonald's, and we barely had enough food to share among the 6 of us. Afterward, we lay down under the shade of a few oak trees in the park, across from the Capitol in search of some relief from the heat. It got so unbearable that we jumped the fence and took refuge in some convalescent home's pool. We didn't give a fuck that we were trespassing. Actually, if we'd gotten arrested, it probably would have been an improvement. Or at least there would be food and better air conditioning than Jane's car. Once the sun went down and it finally cooled off enough to get in the back seat, back into that thing, we got back on the road. I didn't realize it until years later, but that trip cemented us as a band more than we knew. Our commitments were tested on that journey. We partied, we'd played, we'd survived, we'd endured. And we racked up a lifetime's worth of stories in just 2 weeks. Or was it 1 week? I think it was 1 week. What do I know? It makes sense that Gunn's first show took place in Seattle because as much as LA was our address, we had as much in common with the average LA band as Seattle's weather has with Southern California's. Our main influences were Aerosmith, especially for me. And then there was T-Rex, Hanoi Rocks, and the New York Dolls. I guess you could even say that Axl was a version of Michael Monroe. So when we were back in LA with our first gig ever as a band behind us, we were all set to get back to rehearsing and keep the momentum focused. We got together out at this space in Silver Lake, and we were all packed into Duff's little Toyota Celica, driving home after rehearsal. As we pulled into an intersection to make a left turn, we were broadsided by some guy doing about 60 miles an hour. Jesus Christ. Steven broke his ankle because his legs were stretched out between the 2 front seats. And everyone got pretty banged up, myself least of all. I walked away unscathed. It was a pretty gnarly little accident. Duff's car was totaled, and we could have been too. That would have been a sick twist of fate. The band died together after we'd just gotten together. Oh, you gotta do the thing for the altitude, Cheetah. Oh. We started hanging around with a few of the seedier rock and roll type people in LA scene. They were part of an underbelly of the typical Sunset Strip rock fan didn't know about. One of the characters was Nicky Beat, who was the drummer for LA Guns for a minute, but mostly spent his time playing in lesser known glam bands like the Joneses. Nicky wasn't necessarily seedy, but he had a lot of seedy friends. He also had a rehearsal studio in his house in Silver Lake where we'd go, set up our gear and jam. And that is where the whole band really came together. Izzy had something called Think About You that he liked, and we revisited Don't Cry, which was the first song I'd ever worked on with Izzy. Izzy had another riff song called Out to Get Me that clicked with me immediately when I first heard it. We had that done in no time. Axl remembered a riff that I'd played with him where I was living over at my mom's house, which was ages ago at this point. It was the introduction to the main riff to Welcome to the Jungle. That song, if anything, was the first real tune that the band wrote together. We were sitting around rehearsal, looking to write something new, when that riff came out to Axel's mind. "Hey, what about that riff you played me a while ago?" he asked. "When you were staying with me?" I asked. "Yeah, it was good. Let's hear it." I started playing it, and instantly Steven came up with a beat. Duff joined in with the bass line, and away we went. I kept throwing parts out to build on it, the chorus part, the solo, as Axel came up with the lyrics. Duff was the glue on that song. He came up with the breakdown, that wild rumbling bass, and Izzy provided the texture. In about 3 hours, the song was complete. The arrangement is virtually the same as it appears on the album. Well, that's fucking impressive. We needed an intro, and I came up with one that day using the digital delay on my cheap Boss guitar pedal board. I got my money's worth out of that thing because, as crappy as it was, the pedal provided the tense echo effect that set the mood for that song and eventually the kickoff for our debut album. A lot of our earliest songs came to us almost too easy. Out to Get Me came to be in an afternoon, even faster than Jungle. Izzy showed up with the riff and the basic idea for the song, and the second he played it, the notes hit my ear and inspired me. That one happened so quickly. I think that even the most complicated section, the dual guitar parts, were written in under 20 minutes. I had never been in a band where pieces of music that I found so inspiring came so fluidly. I can't speak for the other guys, but judging by the speed at which our collective creativity came together, I assume they felt something similar. We seemed to share this common knowledge and a kind of secret language back then, as if we all already knew what the other guy was going to bring to rehearsal and had already written the perfect part to move the song along. When we were all on the same page, it was really that easy. We borrowed shit from chicks, and initially, we had that trashy glam look, though a lot more rough-edged. Very quickly, though, we got too lazy to do the makeup and all that, so our glam phase was short-lived. Plus, the clothes were a problem because we were always changing girlfriends, and you never knew what the next she was going to have. Besides, I don't think that look ever really suited me. I didn't have any emaciated white boy long-haired physique. Ditching the whole idea worked out to our advantage. In the end, we were grittier, more traditional, and more genuine. More of a product of Hollywood itself than the LA glam scene. We were also lunatic fringe rock and roll band. We thrived on being out of place and took every gig we were offered. We practiced every day, and new songs came quickly. We tested them out in front of body crowds at venues like Madame Wong's West and the Troubadour and the Whiskey. I looked at whatever we did each day as the next step along a path to where everything was possible. In my mind, it was simple. If we focused on nothing but surmounting the nearest obstacle, we'd make our way from point A to point C in no time, no matter how great the distance. / there's a B between A and C. Damn it, man. With every show that we played, we made more fans, and usually a few new enemies. It didn't matter. As we drew bigger crowds, it was easier to get our gigs. Our fans from the start were always a mixed bag. We had punks, we had metalheads, we had stoners, we had psychos, the odd weirdo, and a few lost souls. They were never an easily identified or quantifiable commodity. In fact, after all those years, I'm still at a loss for a simple phrase that puts a bow on them, which is fine by me. Guns' diehard fans were, I suppose, kindred spirits, misfits who'd made their outcast status in their stance. Made outcast status their stance. Once our profile started to grow on the local level, we hooked up with Vicky Hamilton, a manager who'd helped us both with both Motley Crue and Poison in their early days. Vicky was a 5'9" overweight platinum blonde with a whiny voice who just believed in us and proved it by promoting us for free. She wanted that Guns N' Roses D! I liked Vicky a lot. She was very sincere and meant well. She helped me get posters for our shows printed, took out ads in the LA Weekly, and dealt with promoters at our gigs. I worked alongside her, doing everything I could to further our cause. With her help, everything began to really take off. We started playing at least once a week as our exposure increased. So did the need to get some new clothes. My 3 t-shirts, my loaner leather jacket, 1 pair of jeans, and 1 pair of leather pants weren't going to cut it. I decided that I had to do something about it that afternoon, the afternoon before we played our first Saturday night headlining slot at the Whiskey. I didn't have the financial means to make much happen, so I wandered into shops in Hollywood looking for odds and ends. I stole a concho belt from a place called Leathers and Treasures that was black and silver, just like the one Jim Morrison always wore. I planned on wearing it with my jeans or my pair of leather pants, which I'd found in the dumpster of my grandmother's old apartment complex. Gross, but okay, and continued browsing the various shops. I found something interesting in a place called Retail Slut. There was no way I could afford it, and for the first time in my life I wasn't sure how I could steal it, but I knew I had to have it. A large black top hat doesn't easily fit under your shirt. Though I've had so many stolen from me over the years, someone has worked out an effective technique that I don't know about. In any case, I'm still not sure if the staff noticed, and if they did, whether or not they cared. I blatantly snatched the top hat off the mannequin and casually walked out the store and never looked back. I don't know what it was. The hat just spoke to me. That's pretty awesome, though. Like, Slash is... Like, literally, you can't imagine Slash without a fucking that top hat. Once I got back to the apartments I was living in at the time, I realized my new purchases would best serve each other by becoming one. I cut the belt to fit the top hat and was happy with the way it looked. I was even happier to discover with my new accessory pulled down as far as I could go, I could see everything but no one could really see me. Some might say that a guitarist hides behind his instrument anyway, but my hat added an impenetrable comfort. And while I never thought it was original, it was mine, a trademark that became an indelible part of my image. No doubt. When Guns first got going, I was working at a newsstand on Fairfax and Melrose. I lived with my on-again, off-again girlfriend, Yvonne, full-time, until she got sick of me, at which point we broke up once, leaving me nowhere to live. My former manager at the newsstand, Allison, let me crash on her living room couch and pay half of her rent. She was a very handsome reggae chick with an apartment on Fairfax and Olympic, who was taking college classes at night. Allison was attractive, but I always thought that either she was a little old for me or that I was a little young for her. Either way, we never had that kind of relationship. We got along very well, and when she left the newsstand for a better job, I was lucky enough to inherit her position. Allison had always treated me like the cute stray she'd taken in, and I did little to prove her wrong. As her tenant, I didn't take up much space. My worldly possessions were my guitar, a black trunk full of rock magazines, cassettes, an alarm clock, some pictures, and whatever clothes I owned or had been given by friends and girlfriends. And there was my snake, Clyde, in his cage. Anyway, newsstand job came up to an abrupt end in the summer of '85 when a local rock station, KNEC, threw a party out in Griffith Park, complete with free charter buses that departed from the Hyatt on the Sunset Strips. I headed over there after work with 2 pints of Jack Daniels in my jeans, not giving a shit that I was expected to open the newsstand up at 5 in the morning. It was a pretty debauched summer night, as I recall. People passed bottles and joints as the bus made its way across. There were plenty of local characters and musicians on board, and when we got there, music playing and a barbecue, The grass was full of people engaged in everything. Pow, penises. I got so fucked up that night that I brought a girl back to Allison's place and was fucking her on the living room floor when Allison came home and caught us. She didn't need to say anything. Her expression told me that she wasn't too pleased. I stayed up with this girl anyway until it was time for me to go to work. By the time I got her dressed and on her way, I was already late and my boss Jake had called. I was in the doghouse because I used the phone at the newsstand to conduct band business so often that he'd started calling during my shifts to catch me in the act, which proved to be difficult. Those were the days before call waiting, and I was on the phone constantly, so it took Jake hours to get through just to yell at me. Needless to say, he was pretty pissed off about opening up for me on that day. Yeah, Jake, I'm sorry, I mumbled. I'm still pretty drunk. I was still pretty drunk for when he called for the second time. I know I'm late. I got held up, but I'm on my way. Oh, you're on your way, he asked? Yeah, Jake, I'll be there really soon. No, you won't, he said. Don't bother. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. I paused for a minute and let that sink in. You know, Jake, that's probably a good idea. This is intriguing. Interesting? Penis. Well, good news, people. I'm out of whiskey. Good Lord, Slash, how long are your fucking chapters? Oh yeah, I'm not finishing this chapter. Jesus Christ. $40 pages? Are you fucking shitting me? Yeah, I'm pretty much done with this one. I'll read this next section and that'll be that. At that time, Duff and Izzy still lived across the street from each other on Orange Avenue. Duff had a working class musician mentality like mine. Until the band really got going. He didn't feel right if he didn't have a job, even if his job was morally suspect. He did phone sales or phone theft, depending on your point of view. Duff worked as a telemarketer for one of those firms that promised people a prize of some kind if they agreed to pay a small fee in order to redeem it. I had a similar job before I got my job in the clock factory. I'd call people all day, promising them a jacuzzi or a tropical vacation if they just confirmed their credit card number to cover their eligibility fee. It was a nasty cutthroat gig, and I got out the day before it was raided by the police. Got out or got fired. Either way, penis. Axel and Steven would do anything not to work a regular job, so they got by on the street or via girlfriends' houses. Though, as I recall, on occasion Axel and I both took jobs together as extras on movie sets. We were in a few crowd shots at the LA Sports Arena for a Michael Keaton movie called Touch and Go, where he played a hockey player. We didn't care as much for the camera time as we did getting fed and making money for doing nothing. We'd show up in the morning, get our meal ticket, and then find somewhere to sleep behind the bleachers where we couldn't be found. We'd wake up when they called for lunch to eat with the rest of the crowd, and then sleep till it was time to clock out and collect our extra $100 check. I like being the industry's least industrious extra as often as possible. I found absolutely nothing wrong with free lunch and an afternoon of being paid to sleep. I look forward to the same when I was scouted by a casting director for the film Sid and Nancy. Unbeknownst to any of us, the same casting director in various locales scouted every single member of Guns N' Roses individually. All of us up to the first day of casting like, hey, what are you doing here? It wasn't much fun. Actually, it was like jury duty. There was a pen full of extras, but all 5 of us were chosen to be in the same concert scene where the Sex Pistols are playing some small club. Shoot required showing up early in the morning for 3 consecutive days with the usual promise of a meal ticket and $100 each day. A 3-day commitment was too much for the other guys. In the end, I was the only one of us pathetic enough to show up for the duration. Fuck them. I had a blast. For 3 days, they shot Sex Pistols concert scenes at the Starwood, a club I knew inside and out. I'd show up in the morning, clock in, get my meal ticket, and then disappear into the bowels of the Starwood and get drunk on Jim Beam all by myself. While the other extras were doing their part, playing audience members down on the floor in front of the stage, I watched proceedings from a hidden corner of the mezzanine and got paid the same wage. Well, on that note, that's where I'm going to call it. I really do appreciate each and every single one of you that are here. And for those billions of people that need to be here that aren't, it really is your loss. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I will be on tomorrow night. I will be doing the thing. The Bobby Ross Wednesday. And I will be finishing up Zorro and probably moving on to Luffy. Although we could be working on Sanji. I'm not sure. Should I be working on the Cook Sanji or Luffy after I finish? You know what? You guys think about that tomorrow while I'm finishing up Zorro. Zorro doesn't need much. Got to finish up his earrings, which should take me maybe an hour at the most. Penises. I will talk to you guys tomorrow on Bobby Ross Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in to Books and Bourbon. I will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, if not earlier. But hey, notification or not, I'll be on. I'll talk to you guys later. Oh, wait. I should have said, Lord willing, I'll be on. Either way, good night, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Bye!